Let me tell you something strange about choice in the modern world. We live in a society where almost everything is celebrated. Career changes, new homes, engagements, pregnancies, milestones wrapped in congratulations. Yet some people make a choice that's met with confusion, even resistance. They decide not to have children. They live full lives, pursue dreams, build connections, but never become parents. You might even know someone like that. Maybe you are someone like that. And here's the question that always seems to follow them. Why? Why would someone choose to opt out of what the whole world seems to call the most natural thing? It's easy to assume that people who remain child-free are simply selfish or career-obsessed. But that's not the full picture. Beneath the surface, there's an entire psychology at play, one that speaks volumes about human autonomy, self-awareness, and the quiet resistance against a narrative that says fulfillment must look the same for everyone. See, for some people, childlessness is not absence. It's intention. It's the power to choose what shape their life takes. Because whether we admit it or not, society has subtly shaped how we define a complete life. It rewards conformity, it praises tradition, and yet those who step outside that path are often the ones who've thought about it most deeply. They question without needing to conform. They reflect before deciding. They understand before committing. Psychologists have found something fascinating. People who consciously choose to remain child-free often score higher on traits like self-determination, personal agency, and life satisfaction, authenticity. They tend to be less influenced by social expectations and external timelines. In other words, they aren't trying to prove their choices are right. They're trying to honor what feels true. And in a world that often confuses obligation with love, that's radical. Because let's be honest, much of what we do isn't just living, it's script following. It's an unconscious performance of what life is supposed to look like. Every milestone, every tradition, every expectation says, this is how you matter. Do you agree? But when you choose differently, something shifts. You begin to separate your worth from societal approval. You stop measuring your life by others' standards. You start building a future for yourself instead of for validation. And that's the secret psychology behind many people who remain child-free. They crave authenticity in a world where so much feels predetermined. They don't hate children. They just can't find their purpose in that role. It's not about being anti-family or anti-tradition. It's about refusing to live a life that doesn't fit. Because when you've seen how easily people follow paths they never chose, you start valuing what comes from within. Clarity, freedom, choice, truth. For some, the decision to remain child-free comes after deep introspection. Maybe they once assumed they'd have children until one day they realized it wasn't actually their desire. They understood that every time someone asked when they'd start a family, they felt an invisible pressure to want something they didn't. They weren't rejecting parenthood out of fear. They were honoring a truth about themselves. So they chose quietly. No grand announcement, just a clear decision about the direction of their life. But here's what's often misunderstood. Not having children doesn't mean not nurturing. It doesn't mean they don't care about legacy or connection. It often means they express those things differently, through mentorship, creativity, relationships, impact. There's a concept in psychology called reproductive autonomy. It's the understanding that the decision to have or not have children is deeply personal, tied to one's sense of self and future. And when you exercise that autonomy, your life becomes yours in a way it never was before. The path becomes uncharted, open to possibility, defined by intention, not obligation. So people who remain child-free are often designing their sense of purpose on their own terms. They keep their energy undivided, their time self-directed, their future fluid. And maybe that's not emptiness or selfishness. Maybe it's a different kind of fullness. Because think about it. When was the last time someone's decision not to have children was met with the same enthusiasm as someone announcing a pregnancy? When was the last time we celebrated someone for knowing what they don't want as much as what they do? That reflexive judgment, that assumption of incompleteness, is not natural. It's conditioned. It's the product of centuries of narratives training our minds to equate parenthood with maturity, with purpose, with contribution. And when someone steps outside that framework, it can feel threatening to those still inside it. But it's also liberating. They start rediscovering the fullness of life lived on their terms, traveling without constraint, pursuing passions without interruption, resting without guilt. In that space, something awakens, a kind of self-knowledge that doesn't need justification. But not everyone who remains child-free is doing it from a place of confidence. Some are driven by fear, the fear of inadequacy, of losing themselves, of repeating patterns they grew up with. Parenthood has amplified a subtle form of anxiety psychologists call anticipatory role strain. It's the awareness that becoming a parent would fundamentally change who you are. And for many, that's overwhelming. They worry that they wouldn't be enough, or worse, that they'd lose themselves entirely. So they opt out, not because they don't value family, but because the cost of that transformation feels too high. They want to contribute, but on their own terms, not through a role that feels misaligned. And ironically, sometimes the people most thoughtful about not having children would have made wonderful parents. They're not absent of care. They're overflowing with it. They just choose different recipients for that energy. There's a deep philosophical undertone to that choice. In a world that constantly says, this is the path, choosing differently becomes a form of self-definition. It's saying, my life has value beyond traditional measures. They might watch others build families, smiling, supporting, sometimes wondering, but they rarely regret because they understand something most don't. Not every meaningful life includes children. Sometimes the most profound contributions, art, innovation, healing, mentorship, happen through different channels. And when you've lived long enough to see multiple paths to fulfillment, you start realizing that remaining child-free is not the same as remaining purposeless. It's actually where purpose becomes self-authored, not inherited. This is where the paradox lies. Society tells us that having children is the ultimate act of selflessness. Yet it often pressures people into parenthood for the most selfish reasons. To fit in, to fulfill expectations, to avoid judgment. When you choose not to have children, you stop living for those external measures and start building meaning that's internally defined. You begin noticing what truly matters to you without the weight of should. You learn what legacy means beyond bloodlines. That kind of clarity, raw, unapologetic, feels revolutionary. And the people who remain child-free, they live in that space. They build lives that don't need validation. They find fulfillment in the unchosen path, and they let their story unfold without forcing it into a predetermined shape. Part of this is also about identity preservation. Knowing who you are even when everyone expects you to become someone else. When you're comfortable with your own choices, you don't need society to approve of your life direction. That's not defiance, it's peace. And ironically, the same people who choose to remain child-free often have the richest relationships, but they invest them differently, in friendships, in community, in partnerships that don't revolve around raising children. Because real connection to them isn't measured in family trees or generational legacy. It's in shared values, in mutual growth, in love that doesn't need biological ties. These are the people who carry depth within them, who choose deliberately, live intentionally, and understand profoundly. They don't need society to validate their life choices. They just need to live them. And maybe, just maybe, in a world so focused on reproduction, their choice isn't a rejection, it's an expansion, a reminder that not every meaningful life follows the same blueprint, that sometimes the most human thing you can do is honor what feels true for you. You know what's fascinating? The longer someone lives child-free by choice, the more they begin to see life differently. Possibilities feel wider, time feels more flexible, relationships feel more intentional. It's as if choosing your own path makes everything clearer. Because when you stop following the script, you start writing your own story. There's a quiet confidence in moving through life without needing to justify your choices. You're not thinking about timelines or biological clocks or what others expect. You're just there, fully present, building a life that reflects who you actually are instead of who you're supposed to be. And that's something traditional narratives rarely let us explore anymore. But the psychology behind this goes deeper than personal preference or lifestyle. It's rooted in how we process identity and meaning. Throughout history, parenthood has been seen as the ultimate rite of passage, the marker of adulthood, responsibility, contribution. But in recent decades, something has shifted. People are questioning whether that narrative serves everyone, and those who choose to remain child-free are often at the forefront of that questioning. That's not rebellion. That's evolution. It takes courage to examine something so deeply ingrained and say, "This isn't for me." People who remain child-free often have a strong internal locus of evaluation, a psychological term meaning their sense of success and fulfillment comes from within, not from meeting external milestones. They don't need the marker of parenthood to believe their life matters. And here's what's even more interesting. Studies show that people who make conscious decisions about remaining child-free often report higher levels of life satisfaction and personal freedom compared to those who had children due to social pressure or default assumptions. Because when your life path is chosen rather than assigned, it becomes authentic. It becomes yours. You're no longer molding yourself into a role that doesn't fit. You're living in alignment with your values, desires, and truth. And maybe that's the real revolution, to build a meaningful life without following the map everyone else was given. But choosing to remain child-free doesn't always mean ease. Sometimes it carries judgment. For many, this decision became a source of constant explanation. There's a subtle social pressure that comes from family gatherings, workplace conversations, even strangers who ask, "So, when are you having kids?" You start defending a choice you never questioned internally. You start justifying why your life is enough. And eventually some people grow weary, not of their decision, but of needing to explain it. They realize they don't owe anyone access to their reasoning. They don't owe proof that their life is fulfilling. And they don't need to keep defending happiness just to be believed. That's one of the quiet struggles of this generation. We've confused conformity with correctness. We assume that the path most traveled is the only valid one. But real fulfillment doesn't require consensus. Some of the most meaningful lives, the ones lived with intention and depth, look nothing like the standard model. No children, no traditional family structure, no conventional milestones, just authenticity. And maybe that's what those who remain child-free understand best. They know that emptiness is not the absence of children, it's the absence of choice. Because when you stop living according to others' timelines, you start hearing your own rhythm again. You start reconnecting with the parts of you that always knew what you wanted. Your dreams, your priorities, your definition of legacy. And that's something profoundly personal in today's world. It's not a rejection of others' choices. It's an embrace of your own. Of course, it's not without moments of doubt. There are times when you wonder if you'll regret it, if you're missing out on something profound, if you'll be alone in old age. But with time, you start noticing something grounding. Your worth doesn't depend on becoming a parent. It's still there, solid, like the foundation of a life built on self-knowledge rather than expectation. And maybe that's what real peace looks like. Not the loud declaration of your choice, but the quiet certainty of it. Some people say, you'll change your mind. But the truth is, the people most certain about remaining child-free have thought about it more than those who simply followed tradition. Their decision isn't impulsive, it's informed. And maybe that deserves respect. When psychologists talk about life satisfaction, they emphasize congruence, the alignment between who you are and how you live. But in a world that pushes parenthood as the default, that alignment can be difficult to achieve. You begin to live as a version of yourself shaped by expectation rather than choice. So when someone chooses to remain child-free, it might be their way of staying congruent, of preserving that essential truth between their inner values and outer life. They don't need children to validate their capacity for love. They don't need a family structure to prove they matter. They live fully and intentionally. And here's the paradox. Those who choose not to have children often think most deeply about what it means to bring life into the world. They're not careless, they're conscientious. They understand the weight of that decision and choose differently, not out of fear, but out of clarity. They are intentional, and intention is the rarest foundation for life choices in a world built on autopilot. But sometimes that very intentionality makes them misunderstood. People might label them as incomplete, as missing something essential, even as tragic figures. Yet if you look closer, their choice isn't absence. It's presence. It's the calm that comes from building a life that doesn't need to mirror anyone else's to matter. There's a quiet strength that comes from living authentically, just understood by those who matter. And that's what people who remain child-free understand best. They know that not every life needs the same chapters, that some paths are meant to be walked differently, written uniquely, lived without apology. Because once you let go of the script, life stops being about what you should do and starts being about what you actually want. And maybe some futures are too personal for comparison. So the next time you meet someone who's chosen to remain child-free, don't assume they're missing out. Maybe they're just living differently. Maybe they found fulfillment in spaces the traditional narrative doesn't acknowledge. The ones not defined by diapers and school runs, but by purpose, passion, and peace. Maybe they're the ones who've remembered what the rest of us forgot. That being child-free doesn't mean being loveless. That choosing differently doesn't mean choosing less. That sometimes the truest expression of who you are is honoring what you actually want. Because in the end, we're not meant to be copies of each other. We're meant to be ourselves. And the people who remain child-free, they remind us of that every intentional, unapologetic, beautifully chosen day.